This essay is dedicated to Mihaela, who made the whole story possible. The heartache was racking. It was not just the storm outside, the cold Berlin night, and the prospect of spending it in a new shoebox apartment where I hadn't even moved my belongings that made me feel that way. Surrounded by crates and pile of things, I sobbed. I wanted to be one with the floor, find a small dent in the wood and hide there. The floor smelled like fresh pine, or like detergent, but it felt soft against my back. I felt like sinking in. I lay there for a while. My partner wasn't returning, and I couldn't go back to our old home either. Despite our breakup months ago, we still shared the same roof for a while. And it was only in the confines of my newly rented, tiny attic apartment that reality finally hit. I gazed through the window as if the sky, pitch black and starless, possessed some magical ability to give my life a much-needed plot twist. If I am to move on from this, show me a butterfly in the next 48 hours, I said. And if I was not to move past it and still needed to endure and cry and perhaps get back with my ex, then the universe was to show me something different. As my mind searched for what that something different could be, the phone rang. A friend was trying to convince me to meet her. I made up a chain of excuses, but she pressed, and she was very convincing. It was Friday night. At a pub, I told my friend, I won't ever have sex again. I wanted to return to my apartment and continue to lie on the floor. But her optimism was contagious. Tonight, you will see. She pointed at a man nursing a drink by the bar, talking with the barkeeper. He has been looking at you, she said. I have a feeling, I don't know, I think he's your soulmate or something. I told my friend I was going home, but she pushed me to go get another drink. I was now less than an arm's length close to the guy at the bar. I asked for a wine spritzer in German and waited. As I waited, I eyed my friend, implying it was nonsense, and thought to myself, I'll just pay for the drink and go home. Then he spoke. He had a pleasant voice, luckily. He told me he was from Philadelphia and that the bar was his old favorite in Berlin. He also said he didn't speak German. Well, neither do I reckoned, alluding to the place where I was born. So then you must be from that part of Romania where they don't speak German, he said. Clever, I thought. I went back to my friend and told her I didn't like his gray socks tucked in brown shoes. But I was open to at least having a conversation. Eventually he came and sat with us, and the conversation, to my surprise, flowed. So after some time, my friend decided it was safe to leave us to ourselves. Christopher was a scholar who liked to talk about anything. He seemed like a cultured, humble, refreshing companion. And I could tell he was attempting to put me at ease and conceal his own nervousness by ordering more drinks. He said he felt at home in Europe and had a penchant for Vienna, where he lived 6 months a year. He was now visiting Berlin to meet old friends before returning to New York. As it became more apparent that we had a lot of topics to talk about, we headed to the bar called Melody Nelson. At 2:22 in the morning, he leaned over and kissed me. It was the 2nd of February 2020. We stayed up talking until the morning hours, when we arrived at my place and crashed next to each other on the mattress. The pine-scented floor underneath suddenly felt warm and welcoming. The next day he made me a breakfast consisting of French omelette and blueberries, and liaised with my landlord, Denny, a sturdy construction worker from Strasbourg North, to assemble my kitchen. Danny thought Christopher was my boyfriend, and in the next 2 weeks we started to warm up to that idea ourselves, spending the afternoons like tourists, falling for each other and for the city's unnatural grace despite the grey days and the cold nights. He took me to jazz concerts and I took him to all the art museums. There was this strangely comfortable feeling of our house, and then there were fears. Vulnerability found its way through the rose-tinted glasses, and in the days before his leave to New York, I gave to my inability and unwillingness to suffer the impending loss. I told him I can't do long distance. He said he was trying hard not to fall in love with me, and I shared the sentiment. Somehow, this accidental meeting and the circumstances of our lives on different continents, with the unprocessed baggage of our previous relationships, made it all very difficult to believe it would work. He gave me a copy of Julian Barnes' The Noise of Time, and I slipped the hardcover of Chris Krause's I Love Dick in his backpack the day he left. I would have liked to say I love you instead, but none of us dared to utter those words. It was too early, and still we were already attached, which didn't make it any less real or painful to recognize the improbability of a functional relationship. We made plans to meet in Berlin once again in 3 months, while my friend and I had the spontaneous idea to go to New York that spring. "You're a beautiful person," he said, kissed my forehead, and hopped on a train to the airport. I went home and waited to hear he reached New York safe. 5 days later, several states entered lockdown. Christopher didn't make it to New York. He fell ill on the way, got stranded in Philadelphia at his parents' home, and spent there the next 2 years. Throughout confinement, I listened to Edith Piaf a lot. Edith Piaf also loved someone in Berlin. Berlin means nothing to Edith Piaf though. Or maybe it means everything. Even under Berlin's dirty skies, she found eternity in a moment with a certain man. And then, because she's Edith Piaf and doesn't live happily ever after, it all ends. We decided to break up when it became obvious that the borders would indefinitely remain closed. We broke up on Skype, which was as deflating as a statistic. It was April, and the empty streets gave way to the irreverence of nature in bloom, with cherry blossoms and lilac flowers sprouting everywhere. I stopped seeing airplanes from my attic window. Everything was very silent. The world had stopped. When I received a grant for a pandemic-themed art residency, I threw myself into work. We never met again, and nearly 1 year passed before we reconnected and clumsily turned that initial romance into a literary friendship. For the longest time, we had been the last people each of us had touched, and there was a tenderness to it, albeit a punitive one. The absence felt strange and suffocating. I had lost not one person I cared for, but two. The grief from my previous relationship and that of a new love cut short grew and unraveled, begging for my attention. I carried this grief with me like carrying a child, sat in that imminent loneliness and disconnection from the world, and the year turned into one of magical thinking. Melody Nelson closed in July 21. I was sad, of course. One Monday after work, I went to have a Bloody Mary at Z Bar, the pub where I originally met Christopher. It was quiet. The bar owner and I were the only people there. But he remembered both of us. We talked about the meaning of life in those moments. We need more love stories, the bar owner told me. We had many love stories with Berlin and in Berlin, even if most of them ended. Many of the old places closed, and some of the people went away or simply out of sight, he said. I replied that what remained were good friends, some of the places and the memories, the continued living memories. I thought of the dozens of emails Christopher and I wrote each other to preserve those memories. Everything is replaced over time by something else, though. The sadness of the world, and even the sadness of that night when lingering on the floor, I asked the universe for a sign to help me move forward from heartbreak. The barkeeper put some music, and for a reason or another, it released movement in my body. I started dancing by myself, picturing this day when I could throw a big party at home, where all my friends, all lovers, pen pals, and even my parents finally came together to celebrate the end of the global catastrophe we were in. I imagined the whole scene very carefully and kept dancing in a trance-like state until the voice of Edith Piaf broke, as if out of nowhere, as songs tend to do. I gazed across the empty pub, washed in the golden hour by now, and envisioned Christopher sitting across from my friend that night when we very first met. A seemingly forgotten detail popped in my mind. "What is this?" he had asked, pointing at a tattoo on her wrist. "It's a butterfly," my friend had exclaimed. my face illuminated softly. My heart had been like a cocoon that survived specifically because it was torn open. And our story was short-lived, exactly like a butterfly. But I regretted nothing. I smiled. My ask of the universe had been completely heard and answered. And if it happened then, it will always happen again, if only I let it.